After doing the Warlock guide, I need a bit of a reprieve. I need something efficient that doesn't require as much explanation as that bugger did. So, today we are doing the Barbarian. Welcome to the Attic Dungeon. My name is Sam, and whether you just like to shout at things or have a meet the business end of your great axe, I'm here to help you with everything. The usual bit of promotional jibber jab before we start. Thank you for watching. If you really want to help me and my channel out, spread my good word to other people. Now let's start smashing things. Barbarians. Everybody loves having that big hulking mass of muscle in the party who can just keep on taking punishment and keep on cleaving enemies in two. And that is pretty much what people expect. When they have a barbarian in the party, they expect you to be a beast in melee combat. They expect you to be able to take quite a beating. And they don't have too much expectations of you when it comes to skill checks, except for athletics, obviously. Or, God forbid, spellcasting, because they are actually kind of right. I think the barbarian class is the class with the least buttons to press, so to speak. When we look at the base class, of course, there's the least special shenanigans about these guys. They do gain quite a few features, and almost all of them are aimed at making you a better meat cleaver. Thus, you are one of the best meat cleavers around. I said not casting magic. The Barbarian really doesn't combine well with magic. We'll see why in just a moment. But let's start with looking at what you need for your level 1 Barbarian. Of course, we start with the ever-boring ability scores. Most Barbarians are going to want to be strength-based Barbarians. Why? You get bonus damage and you want to wield those big weapons for maximum damage potential. So the usual Barbarian will have a very high strength score to maximize weapon accuracy and weapon damage, followed by a high constitution score, because, very simply put, you're going to get beaten in the face a lot, so you have to be able to take the damage. Also, Barbarians have something called unarmored defense. They have a possibility to calculate their armor class in a different way. The usual class, of course, takes their armor and, where possible, adds their dexterity. If the Barbarian is not wearing any armor, your armor bonuses are also based on your constitution alongside with your dexterity. So having a high constitution not just gives you more hit points, but also pumps your armor class all the way up, which makes it a very valuable stat for you, the Barbarian. Of course, dexterity will come in as a third ability score to increase for the simple reason, as I said, it increases your armor class, and then, as always, it increases your ever so important dexterity save and your initiative. And when you're the hulking man-tanked beast of a mountain, you actually want to get in there really quickly to take up this important position on the battlefield and start dealing out punishment. Whatever points you have left, I encourage you to flavor your Barbarian any way you see fit. There are a lot of options there. We'll get to those when I get around to making my Barbarian role-playing video, rather. If we look at proficiencies, Barbarians are proficient with all the weapons. You have all simple and all martial weapons, but they are going to really prefer to use those big melee weapons, or maybe go one-hander and shield if you want to emphasize the tanking aspect of a Barbarian, which is a very viable way to go. Your Barbarian will be very good at staying alive, really. Ranged weapons are not that interesting because they don't enjoy some of the benefits that you have while raging, which was one of the core mechanics for Barbarians that we'll get to in a moment. So you get all weapons and you get light and medium armor. Initially, if you look at the low-level medium armors, and I'm not talking about magical ones, but just the base ones, you're better off not wearing any armor at all because of your unarmored defense, which is also why the Barbarian starts without armor. But there will be a point in the game, especially since most of the time your dexterity will not be higher than 14, and honestly, apart from a bit of armor class, you don't really have a reason to push it any higher. So there is going to be a point where the heaviest medium armor is going to be more effective than you using your unarmored defense calculation. But as you rise in play, there are chances that because you bump up your constitution or whatever, your unarmored defense is going to be better again. So keep a look at your total modifiers and your armor class, both when wearing whatever armor you have access to and when just taking your constitution and dexterity modifiers, because it's not a sure bet which one is always going to be the same. It depends on what loot you find and how you spend your ability score increases. Then we come to the Barbarians' unique hit die. Indeed, it is the only class with a D12 hit die. That means that the base Barbarian has 12 HP and then some, and when you level up, as long as you're not rolling, you'll gain 7 plus your constitution modifier. This is the big one. There is no class that gains more hit points on a level up than the Barbarian does. Period. This is something that reinforces your role as a meat shield. Even if you're not, let's say, the main tank of the group, you will still be very capable at absorbing some damage that would make wizards cry and run home to their mommy. Which is really fun, by the way. When other people are like, oh damn, I'm already at 30 HP, you're like, oh, 30 HP, cute, that's like a quarter of my hit points. No, Barbarian, large hit die, super great actually, in combination with the very decent armor class that you get. Saves then, you are proficient in strength saves and constitution saves. As per usual, there's one valuable save and there's one save. The save in this case is obviously strength. There's very few spells that target your strength when you're being attacked, and there's only a handful of effects, I think, that also require strength. It's useful when you need to escape a grapple or when you're webbed or something. So usually strength can be used to escape some form of restraint, but that's it. So it really depends on the type of enemies that you encounter. Then of course we have to look at the skills. The Barbarian, he gets to pick 2 skills from the base class like anyone else, but his list is a bit more limited. They only get to pick from, I believe it's 5 skills, and you get to pick 2 of those. So that's a bit more limited. If there are some specific skills that you want to pick up to flavor your Barbarian, you'll have to look at your backgrounds, because what you get as a Barbarian, as I said, very limited. Then we come to the main feature of the Barbarian class, the Rage feature. Rage does exactly what it sounds like. It makes you very, very angry. In fact, it makes you so angry that you have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. So all of your skills that are relying rather on strength, like athletics, mainly athletics, I don't think there's another one, and all your strength saves will have advantage, which is nice. When you make a melee attack while raging, however, you also get to add, at level 1, +2 damage to every attack. You also have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. And that doesn't matter whether they're magical slashing damage or just normal slashing damage. You have resistance to it, which is really good. A lot of the damage that you will encounter is going to be physical damage. There are ways of expanding your resistances. Some races give more resistances, some classes, subclasses rather, give you even more resistances. But the physical ones are the ones that are going to pop up the most, especially at the lower levels of play. And I'm talking all the way up to level 9 or 10 easily. Most of the damage that you will encounter is physical, and even afterwards, a lot of physical damage. And the Barbarian just resists all of it while raging. The downside is that at level 1 you can only rage twice a day, and you could keep it up for a full minute. It does end though if you didn't attack a target or you were not attacked in an entire round. The rage drops, and of course if you get knocked out, you also stop raging. You can't be angry when you're unconscious. Small side note, I've been saying that the Barbarian really likes those big weapons, and that's true for a number of reasons. But the fact that you gain bonus damage on every attack actually makes some subclasses for the Barbarian very decent dual wielders as well, because the rage damage will be added on both attacks every time. So you get some nice bonus damage there, and you can double down on that by dual wielding. That would mean, of course, that your bonus action is pretty much hogged by your second weapon, and that is going to conflict with a lot of the Barbarian subclasses that rely on bonus actions. Heck, even raging, starting a rage is a bonus action, so you wouldn't be able to dual attack, let's say, the turn you start raging. But then again, that's pretty similar to a ranger having to glue on Hunter's Mark or something. They kind of have the same problem. So it's possible, Barbarians are certainly capable dual wielders, but using a two-hander or a one-hander and a shield is going to give you the most unobstructed play, if that makes any sense. With all of that, you know everything you need to know to play your Barbarian at level 1. So then we move to level 2, which is really good as well. You get two abilities. The first one is Danger Sense, and that one gives you advantage on dexterity saves versus traps, magic, what have you, as long as you can see it. So if you see the enemy sorcerer casting a fireball, you have advantage on the save. If somehow they're behind you, you're not paying attention, you get ambushed and you get fireballed in the back, you will not have the advantage. So it's pretty good as long as your Barbarian is aware of their surroundings. But having advantage on dexterity saves is really, really strong. You already have Constitution, which is a good save versus poison and the likes. You're not a spellcaster, so you're not that attached to Constitution as they are for a save, but still it's a good save. Together with this advantage on dexterity saves, you're actually pretty set for a lot of the physical dangers that you will encounter. Your mental defenses, as you will see, are always a bit lacking, and there lies one of the greater weaknesses of the Barbarians. They tend to be very easily mind controlled, and nothing is more fearsome than your raging Barbarian friend turning around and heading towards the wizard. I hope he brought a second character sheet. Apart from this danger sense, you also gain Reckless Attack. Reckless Attack is something you can activate on each of your turns. It doesn't take any action whatsoever, and it gives you advantage on all your melee attacks. I'm quite sure it is. And this is amazing. Even when you gain extra attack later on, you are gaining you're gaining advantage on both your attacks. That's amazing. I'll repeat, I just repeated it, but I'll repeat it again. That is truly amazing. It comes with a downside though. Everything that is going to attack you in between your turn and your next turn is also going to have advantage against you. This can be somewhat countered by the fact that if you use this while raging, you have resistance to all types of physical damage, so you won't be taking full damage, but still, a lot of things are going to be able to hit you. This means probably that Reckless Attack can be really good when facing a smaller number of enemies, but could potentially kill you if there are a lot of enemies on the field, and especially if a lot of those have ranged weaponry and can just attack you from a distance with advantage. That could become really dangerous even with your resistances. So have a look at the battlefield. In a lot of the cases, I find that using Reckless Attack is well worth it. Having advantage to make sure that those attacks hit is going to be good no matter what you're doing. Just keep an eye on your defenses. Level 3. Of course, you're going to gain your subclass here, your path as it is called. As in all of the class guides, I don't talk about subclasses in the main guide. Those get their separate video. You gain some other things. You can rage an extra time per day. So now you can rage 3 times per day already. It's good. It makes your life a bit more comfortable. And if you're using Tasha's Cauldron of Everything's optional class rules, the Barbarian also gets an extra skill proficiency at level 3. So you get a 3rd proficiency from that limited Barbarian list. It's not much, but it does give you a bit more flexibility outside of combat. Level 4 is the same as for everyone, along with all the other levels that you know by now. It is the ability score increase / feat level. Again, at 8, 12, 16, 19, you get to either bump up some of your ability scores or you grab a cool feat. That's good stuff. Oh, by the way, I seem to have forgotten to tell you this, but it's a good point, a good moment now that we're at the feats, because a lot of people think like, oh, maybe the Barbarian could use some nice spellcasting. I can pick up something cool with a feat like, well, Ritual Caster would actually work, but one of the other spellcasting feats don't. The moment you start raging as a Barbarian, you cannot cast spells anymore, nor can you keep concentrating on any spells that you have going on. So this is why Barbarians and spellcasting really don't mix. They cannot spellcast while using their main mechanic that they will be using quite a lot of the time. So if you're going for a feat, don't pick a spellcasting feat, pick something cool and physical and make your Barbarian even more barbary-ish, I think the nice word would be. Level 5 gives you the ever so nice extra attack. Your Barbarian is going to be able to swing twice in a turn, and you also get fast movement, which basically translates to 10 feet of extra speed every turn, as long as you're not wearing heavy armor. Then again, you're a Barbarian, you really don't have a reason to wear heavy armor, so that's not really a problem. I think they want to prevent you from turning into an angry fighter here. Don't see the point. Oh well, it's a bit of flavor more than anything else, I guess. On with the show. Number 6 is an extra subclass feature and an extra rage per day. Right at this point, you can rage 4 times per day, if I'm not mistaken. Level 7, you gain Feral Instinct, which the most important feature is that you are going to gain advantage on initiative. Just like you already gained advantage on dexterity saves, here is another dexterity feature on which you gain advantage. Seeing as I told you that 14 dexterity is pretty average for a Barbarian, you're actually going to be doing pretty well in the dexterity department by having both advantage on the save and advantage on initiative, probably the 2 most important features for you at this point. So you don't really need to raise your dexterity per se anymore, because here is again a dexterity feature getting buffed just for you. By the way, it is perfectly possible to play a dexterity based Barbarian, I've seen it happen, but you do lose out on the extra rage damage because that only happens when you are dealing strength based damage. The other side of Feral Instinct, it's not just the advantage on initiative, is that you can escape being surprised by starting to rage. So if your party is ambushed and you lose whatever roll that your DM has you do there, which is probably going to be perception, and he says, okay, you're surprised because you're being ambushed, which means you don't get to act in that first round, you can escape it by using your bonus action to start raging, which at which point you will gain your full turn and can just bring the axe to the face once more. This is a pretty unique feature. It's niche, but I think it is one of the only, if not the only, base class feature that allows you to escape ambushes in a very casual way that actually benefits you even more. If you are playing with Tasha's, again, at level 7, Barbarians gain something extra. It is the Instinctive Pounce. This one means that whenever you start raging, whenever you use a bonus action to rage, that is the literal wording, you get to move half your speed for free. Which actually is, it's not overpowered at all. Possibly at this time you're having a speed of 40 if you're a regular race. Let's say you're a human Barbarian, you have an armored movement, speed bonus, so yeah, 40 feet. That means you start raging, you get to move an extra 20, and then you can still move your 40. This is actually a really nice way to get your Barbarian straight into the thick of battle, and it doesn't cost you anything because you're going to rage anyway. So level 8 is of course another ability score increase, or maybe a feat. I really love feats, you know that, but the Barbarian can really benefit from having both a high strength and a high constitution because of the armor class and because of some things you're going to gain later on. Level 9 is where we get 2 things. First off, our rage damage gets a little bump. It goes from +2 on extra on every attack to +3 on every attack. It's nice, it's decent actually, but our main feature at this level is Brutal Critical. What that does is when you roll a critical hit, you get to add another weapon die to your pool. You know how crits work, you roll a nat 20 on your attack roll and you get to roll your weapon die or weapon dice twice. And in this case, you get to add a third one. And I have to say that at this point, the Great Axe is going to start to outshine the Great Sword. Why that? you only get to add one additional weapon die thanks to brutal critical, which means that your great axe, which is a d12 and gets another d12 because of the critical hit, will get another d12 because of brutal critical, thus being able to do damage going anywhere from 3 up to 36, plus of course all your relevant damage modifiers, whereas the greatsword, which has 2d6 of its own, 2d6 from the crit, will only gain one additional weapon die from brutal critical, not the full 2. That is the wording of the ability. You get one additional weapon die. That means that your greatsword could crit anywhere from 5 up to 30, which is another scale, and of course the probability is completely different as well as for the great axe, which can go from 3 up to 36. Now right now this level is very small, but you're going to gain 2 more levels of brutal critical. The great axe will keep gaining d12s and the greatsword will get a d6 each time, so there is going to be a very big difference there. You might think, oh Sam, why are you putting so much math into criticals? Because they don't occur that often. No, that's true, you only have a 5% chance of rolling a critical, but you are attacking twice a turn and you have the possibility of attacking with advantage every time. So when you're rolling 4d20s per turn, there is going to be a pretty nice parade of criticals, globally speaking. You're not going to be pooping them out like some other classes might do, like the champion fighter, for example, king of the crits. But you are going to crit very regularly, and at that point it will be really nice to have this ability with a great axe and not with a great sword. Up to here, by the way, the great sword had the mathematical advantage because of the more stable damage that it produces, but once the swinginess of the great axe can go even swingier with all these crits, in my personal opinion, it outshines the great sword. Level 10 is very simple for us. You gain another subclass feature, but you also gain another primal knowledge thingy. That means you can take another skill proficiency in one of your barbarian skills. That means right now you have 4 skill proficiencies out of the 5 or 6 skills that you can be proficient in from your class. Barbarians are never going to be skill monkeys like a rogue or a bard, but this actually gives them decent utility outside of combat, provided that you are using Tashas. And to be honest, I would ask your dungeon master to allow you to do so. It's not going to break the game in any way, but it gives you a bit more of utility, which is something that the barbarian sorely needs, in my opinion. It is a bit lacking in that department. Level 11 then brings us Relentless Rage. Now, what this does, whenever your barbarian would drop down to 0 HP, you can make a Constitution saving throw. That's right, it's our favorite type of saving throw because we're proficient in it and we are going to have high Constitution. And if you manage to roll a 10 on this Constitution save, you will drop to 1 HP instead of 0. Small exception here, if whatever is attacking you would kill you because of the damage or because it is something that has a kill effect, you cannot Relentless Rage this. That is really not an option. Also, it's already in the name, Relentless Rage. You have to be raging to use this ability, but that kind of, I think that sounds logical from the way they named it. Also, you're a barbarian, you're going to be raging most of the time. So this is the easy bit. You roll a DC 10 con save and you drop down to 1 instead of to 0. There is no limit on how many times you can use this ability, but each time you use it, the difficulty check goes up by 5. So you drop down once, you roll a 10, you get up. You drop down a second time, you have to roll a 15 to get up. The third time it's going to be a 20. The very good news is that this resets on short rest. So if you can relax for a nice hour, the DC resets back to 10. But let's be honest, if in one day you find yourself going down 6 times for some reason, handle the issue. I'm going to repeat this later on, I think, but handle the issue. There's something bigger going on. But this is really a nice backup ability. If something goes wrong, the barbarian can just keep going and going for a little while longer than other classes because you're just that strong. Level 12 is an additional ability score increase, of course, and an additional rage charge per day. This is your 4th one, if I'm not mistaken. you should not be running out of rage anymore, I think. If you are doing, I think 4 fights a day is a very fair amount. There's always situations where you do more in a day, of course. If you are still running out of rage at this point, you're getting 2 more charges as you level up, and the moment you hit level 20, because, you know, we all get to level 20, you can rage an unlimited amount of times a day. So if you're ever doing that top tier play, Barbarians will just rage all day, every day, and sounds like a lot of fun, to be honest. Level 13 then brings you a second level of brutal critical, so that Great Axe is now performing at 4d12 on a crit, whereas the Greatsword is doing 6d6. So the swing between the damage is becoming a lot bigger, with the Great Axe being to cap out at 84 plus modifiers, etc. damage, and the Greatsword being stuck at 36. So the difference is becoming bigger and bigger. As I said, this is really where the Great Axe starts to shine. So level 14 is your last subclass feature. Enjoy it. Level 15 gives us an ability called Persistent Rage. What it does is it prevents your rage from dropping if you didn't manage to attack a target or if you didn't take damage in your last turn. Reminds me that I made a small mistake at the beginning. I said it would be sufficient for you to be attacked if you couldn't attack anyone else, but that's not true. You either need to attack a hostile target or take some damage yourself. Now, nowhere in the book does it say that that damage cannot be self-inflicted for some reason. Just putting that out there. But with Persistent Rage at 15, this no longer applies. You will only stop raging if you deliberately stop raging as a bonus action, you are KO'd, or your minute runs its course and hence you stop raging. Which is, it's good. It's a nice quality of life improvement. It allows you to reposition for a turn if the next enemy is too far away. It's not exactly what I would expect of a high level Barbarian feature. I think I would have put this at level 10 or something. Level 16, an ability score increase, and your rage damage reaches its maximum potential of +4 bonus damage. This might seem like really small increments, always the +1, but don't forget that normally to gain an additional damage on a weapon attack you need to invest 2 points in strength. So this is actually, by now you have 8 strength worth of free damage on each attack while raging. That's actually a lot, since you will attack twice per turn. Level 17, another level, the last level of brutal critical, so that Great Axe upon critical hitting will now inflict 5d12 plus, I'm assuming, your strength plus your rage damage. That is hell of a lot of damage coming from just a casual weapon. You also get an extra charge of rage. Again, you should really never be running out of rage right now, even though it resets on a long rest. Level 18 gives you a unique feature called Indomitable Might. If you have to roll a strength check at this point, a check is not a save, is not an attack, it's a skill check, for example, is a strength check if it's athletics, or any other strength check that your DM might ask for. If the total is less than your strength, which I'm going to assume by now is 18 or 20. If it's not, that would be weird. But then you can just say, oh, it's 18. If your strength is 18, you can just say, oh, I only rolled a 12 on athletics. Yeah, no, it's going to be an 18. And there's no limit on how many times you can do this per day, which is really cool. It's niche, it's going to be situational, but it is a really cool ability. It can be really good for grappling barbarians. I haven't talked about it yet, but the fact that while you rage, you have advantage on your strength checks makes you an exceptionally good grappler. And if for some weird reason your grapple would fail even though you have advantage on the check, you can still use this one to say, no, it's still going to be 18 or 20 anyway. Might be good, might be helpful. I've done a video about grappling before and Barbarian was featured heavily in it, which is maybe why today I'm not focusing on it that much. Level 19 is of course your final ability score increase or your final feat, and then it brings us to level 20, the Primal Champion Capstone ability, widely regarded as quite probably the best class capstone there is. Any barbarian who makes it all the way to level 20 receives +4 to strength and +4 to constitution. If any of these bumps would cause you to go over 20, and they most likely will, that's no problem. You just go over 20, which is really good. You are the only class who, without any form of magic items, can go over the base ability score limit of 20. So it's not unrealistic that you end up with a 24 strength barbarian, maybe even a 24 constitution barbarian if you've been upping that score as well. Let's talk about each of these separately for a moment. So the Constitution one, obviously, it gives you a lot of hit points. It also adds to your armor class. If at this point your Barbarian hasn't found any magical armor yet and you're running around in, let's say, half plate, which is not an unlikely choice, unless if you don't like the stealth disadvantage and you took the other one that gives less armor class but doesn't impose disadvantage. Your armor class is now, assuming you have 14 dexterity, going to be higher without half plate than with half plate, even if you have 14 dexterity, because half plate only uses 14 dexterity. Half plate gives you 15 plus 2, which is 17, and at this point, having a constitution of 24 would equal a bonus of plus 7 to your armor class. Add plus 2 from 14 dexterity, you are at 19 armor class without wearing any armor. Having a shield around will increase that to 21, of course. If you are playing a dexterity barbarian, or you bump dexterity along the road instead of something else, I don't know, but you still have maximum constitution, you can even have 20 armor class without a shield. It's actually really good. So have a look at that. I said it before, unarmored defense option can surpass wearing armor at some point, and this most certainly is that point. What it also does, this plus 4 constitution, is of course improve your chances of passing your relentless rage saving throw. I think at this point you are unable to fail the first saving throw that only has a DC of 10. If you have plus 7 from your constitution already and you get to add your proficiency modifier, which is a whopping plus 6 at the end of the game, you're already at 13 without actually rolling something. That means that the first con save that you have to do for relentless rage is already done. You have 13 without rolling. You will revive. You will un-KO yourself at 1 HP guaranteed. Even the second one that requires you to make a 15 is almost a freebie as long as you don't roll a 1. And the third one, which requires you to make a 20, actually requires you to roll a 7. So this constitution thing might seem trivial as just a hit point increase, but it actually does a lot for your barbarian. On the other hand, we have the plus 4 strength, which of course is absurd on its own. You are walking around with a plus 13 to hit on your attack rolls without adding any magical shebangs here. This is just your raw weapon roll. If you had 20 strength, it goes to 24, hence you get plus 7 to your attack from your strength, plus 6 from your proficiency bonus. Voila, it is plus 13, which is going to be 2 higher than any other class with 20 in their prime stat. Of course, you still have advantage on every attack if you wish it to be, so you are going to hit a lot of things, and it is going to hurt, of course, because that strength is going to translate to your damage as well. And again, at level 18, you had Indomitable Might, where you can use your strength score as a replacement for any strength check. So if you are that grappling barbarian at level 20, you can always have a grappling check of 24, because your strength is 24. Anything lower than 24 becomes a 24. Now we're going to assume that your athletics is also going to be very high because of this. It might even be proficient, but if you still roll really badly on the die, you can still say, oh no, it's 24. So even the strength does more than just allow you to bash people's head in quicker, but that is of course the main thing why we are here. And there we are. That is everything I have to offer you for the Barbarian. As you can see, the base class is really not that complex. It is incredibly well suited for new players. Luckily, some of the subclasses add some more depth to the class. It is never going to have the utility that some of the other classes have, but it is a really great class in combat. It is tons of fun to play. So don't hesitate to try it out. I'm sure you can find yourself a use outside of combat if you have a good character concept, a decent background, and work with your subclass in creative ways. So tell me about your barbarians in the comments down below, whether you've played them, whether you like them, whether you think they're awesome or not. And if all goes well, we'll have a nice little chat, and then I'll see you all again in 2 weeks in the attic dungeon.